Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Benjamin, and if you're new here, well, you've stumbled upon a story that might just change how you think about family, boundaries, and the price of unconditional love. Before we dive into today's story, and trust me, this one's going to take us on quite the emotional roller coaster, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It truly helps the channel grow, and honestly, your support means the world to me. Also, give this video a like if you find value in what I'm sharing, and don't forget to share it with someone who might need to hear this story. Now, I want you to do something for me right now. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in New York, London, maybe somewhere exotic like Bali? I read every single comment, and I'll do my best to say hello to everyone. Your engagement keeps me going, especially when sharing stories as personal and difficult as this one. So here's the thing that happened to me just 3 months ago that completely shattered my world and rebuilt it in ways I never expected. Picture this: you're a father who's worked his entire life to provide for his family. You've sacrificed your own dreams, your own wants, and sometimes even your own needs to ensure your children had everything they could ever want. You've been the safety net, the problem solver, the one who swoops in when things go wrong. And then, on what should be one of the happiest days of your life, your son's wedding day, you hear words that cut deeper than any knife ever could: "Dad, you've ruined everything. This is all your fault." Those words came from my son Michael's mouth just 48 hours before his wedding. And in that moment, standing in my kitchen at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone, called the wedding venue, and canceled the $47,000 payment I had promised to cover. But this story isn't just about a canceled wedding payment. It's about what happens when love becomes enabling, when generosity becomes exploitation, and when a father finally learns the hardest lesson of all: sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no. Let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand why I made that phone call, you need to understand who I am, who Michael is, and how we got to that breaking point. My name is Benjamin Walsh, and I'm 63 years old. I've been married to my beautiful wife Sarah for 38 years, and we have 2 children, Michael, who's now 29, and his sister Emma, who's 31. I spent my career as an electrical engineer, working my way up from an entry-level position at a small firm to eventually running my own electrical contracting business. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and it allowed me to provide for my family in ways my own father never could for ours. You see, I grew up poor. Not just, we had to be careful with money, poor, but sometimes we ate cereal for dinner, poor. My father worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads, and even then, there were months when the electricity got shut off or when we had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. I remember wearing shoes with holes in them to school and pretending I wasn't hungry when other kids talked about what they had for lunch. I made myself a promise when I was 12 years old, sitting in our tiny apartment, watching my mother cry over a pile of bills: my children would never know that kind of struggle. They would never have to choose between school supplies and new clothes. They would never have to be embarrassed about where they lived or what they wore or whether there was enough food in the house. And I kept that promise. Boy, did I keep that promise. When Michael and Emma were growing up, Sarah and I made sure they had everything. Not just the necessities, everything. Michael wanted to play hockey. We bought the equipment, paid for the league fees, drove him to every practice and game. Emma wanted to take dance classes. Private lessons, expensive costumes, competition fees, whatever it took. Michael struggled in school, so we hired tutors. Emma wanted to go to art camp in the summers, so we sent her. When Michael's friends all had the newest gaming console, we made sure he had one too. When Emma wanted a car for her 16th birthday, we bought her a reliable used Honda Civic. Sarah would sometimes pull me aside and say, "Ben, are we spoiling them? Are we teaching them that everything in life comes easy?" And I would look at her and say, "Sarah, isn't that the point? Isn't the whole reason we work so hard so that life can be easier for them than it was for us?" Looking back now, I can see that Sarah was asking the right questions. But at the time, all I could see was my own childhood, the wanting, the struggling, the constant anxiety about money, and I was determined to shield my children from all of that. As Michael and Emma moved into their teenage years and then young adulthood, a pattern began to emerge. Emma, our older child, seemed to understand the value of what we were providing. She worked hard in school, got a scholarship to college, and while she certainly appreciated our support, she also showed initiative and independence. She got part-time jobs, she managed her own money reasonably well, and she always expressed genuine gratitude for what we did for her. Michael was different. And I want to be clear here, I love my son deeply. He's charismatic, funny, creative, and when he wants to be, he can be incredibly thoughtful and loving. But somewhere along the way, Michael learned that there would always be a safety net. No matter what happened, no matter what poor choices he made, Dad would be there to fix it. It started small. In high school, when Michael would forget to do a project that was worth a significant portion of his grade, Sarah and I would stay up until 2 a.m. helping him put something together. When he got his first job at 16 working at a local restaurant and was consistently late, eventually getting fired, I called in a favor with a friend who owned a hardware store to get Michael another job. He just needs to learn responsibility, I told Sarah. This job will teach him. But it didn't. Because every time Michael faced a natural consequence for his choices, I swooped in to soften the blow or eliminate it entirely. In college, when Michael was placed on academic probation his sophomore year, I hired him an academic coach and paid for him to retake classes during summer sessions. When he crashed his car junior year, he'd been drinking, though thankfully no one was hurt and somehow he avoided a DUI, I not only paid for the car repairs but bought him a newer, safer vehicle. I can't let him be without transportation, I justified to Sarah. How's he going to get to his job? To his classes? Sarah would give me that look, you know the one. That look that says, you're making a mistake, but I love you too much to have this fight again. And I would kiss her forehead and promise that this time would be different. This time, Michael would learn. After college, Michael moved back home, temporarily, while he figured out what he wanted to do with his life. Temporary turned into 2 years. During that time, he worked sporadically, a few months here, a few months there. Retail jobs, restaurant jobs, nothing that really captured his interest or used his college degree in communications. I just haven't found my passion yet, Dad, he would say. I don't want to settle for just any job. I want to do something that matters. And I supported that. I told him to take his time, find something he really cared about. I covered his car insurance, his cell phone, his health insurance. I gave him spending money so he wouldn't feel broke when he went out with friends. I wanted him to have the freedom to pursue his dreams without the pressure of immediate financial responsibility. When Michael was 26, he finally moved out, into an apartment I helped him secure by co-signing the lease and paying the security deposit and first month's rent. He'd gotten a job at a marketing firm, and things seemed to be looking up. Finally, I thought, he's launching into independent adulthood. But the calls continued. Dad, my car needs new brakes and I'm a little short on cash this month. Dad, I want to take this professional development course, but it's $800 and I can't swing it right now. Dad, my roommate moved out unexpectedly and I need help with rent until I find someone new. And every time, I said yes. Because that's what fathers do, right? We help our children. We support them as they navigate the challenges of adulthood. We make sure they don't struggle the way we did. When Michael was 27, he met Jessica at a friend's birthday party. Jessica was 25, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and from the moment Michael brought her home to meet us, I could tell this was serious. He lit up when he talked about her. For the first time in years, Michael seemed genuinely excited about someone, in his life. Jessica was lovely. She was smart, hardworking, kind to Sarah, and she seemed to genuinely care about Michael. She also came from a family that was, well, let's just say they had more money than we did. Her father was a successful orthopedic surgeon, her mother was a real estate agent who specialized in luxury homes, and Jessica herself drove a car that cost more than I made in 6 months. At first, I was thrilled. Maybe Jessica would be a good influence on Michael. Maybe being with someone who was so clearly driven and responsible would inspire him to step up his own game. And for a while, it seemed like that was happening. Michael started taking his job more seriously. He moved into a nicer apartment, with financial help from both us and Jessica's family, but still, it represented progress. He started talking about his future in concrete terms rather than vague dreams. 6 months after they started dating, Michael told us he was thinking about proposing. Dad, I know she's the one, he said over dinner one Sunday. I want to spend the rest of my life with her. Sarah and I exchanged glances across the table. We were happy for him, truly. But we were also concerned about the practical aspects. Have you two talked about finances? Sarah asked gently. Marriage is a big step, and it's important to be on the same page about money, career goals, all of that. Michael waved dismissively. We'll figure all that out. When you love someone, the rest just falls into place. I wanted to tell him that wasn't how it worked. I wanted to explain that love, while essential, wasn't enough to pay bills or resolve fundamental differences in values and life approaches. But looking at his face, seeing how genuinely happy he was, I kept those thoughts to myself. A month later, Michael asked if I would help him buy an engagement ring. Nothing crazy, he said. But Jessica deserves something special, and I want it to be perfect. The something special turned out to be a $8,000 diamond ring. Michael had saved up $2,000, and he asked if I could loan him the rest. Loan? I asked. Well, yeah. I mean, I'll pay you back once we're married and Jessica and I have our finances combined. There it was again, the assumption that money would somehow materialize once he was married, that his problems would solve themselves through wishful thinking. But I looked at my son, saw how important this was to him, and I pulled out my checkbook. Consider it an early wedding gift, I said. The proposal was beautiful. Michael planned an elaborate surprise at the botanical gardens where they'd had their first official date. He hired a photographer, arranged for her favorite flowers to be waiting, even had a musician playing her favorite song when she arrived. Jessica said yes, and the pictures were absolutely magical. The engagement party was held at Jessica's parents' house, a sprawling colonial in the most expensive neighborhood in town. Dr. and Mrs. Morrison had invited about 60 people, and the whole event was catered by the same company that handled events at the country club. Sarah and I felt a little out of place, if I'm being honest. We weren't used to this level of formality, I guess you'd call it. But everyone was kind to us, and it was clear that Jessica's family had embraced Michael completely. During the party, Dr. Morrison pulled me aside for a conversation I'll never forget. Benjamin, he said, I want you to know how much we like Michael. Jessica is absolutely smitten with him, and we can see why. He's got a great sense of humor, he's clearly devoted to our daughter, and he fits right into our family. Thank you, I said. We feel the same way about Jessica. Now, Dr. Morrison continued, Jessica's mother and I would like to discuss wedding plans with you and Sarah. We know these things can get expensive, and we want to make sure we're all on the same page about how to handle costs. This was the conversation I'd been dreading but knew was inevitable. We'd love to contribute however we can, I said carefully. Well, here's what we're thinking, Dr. Morrison said. We'd like to handle the reception, venue, catering, band, flowers, all of that. We've been planning Jessica's wedding since she was a little girl, and we have some specific ideas about how we want to celebrate. I nodded, feeling both relieved and slightly embarrassed. The reception would undoubtedly be the most expensive part of the wedding. What we were hoping, he continued, is that you might be able to cover the ceremony costs and maybe the photography. We found a wonderful photographer who specializes in weddings, and Jessica has her heart set on this particular package he offers. Of course, I said quickly. We'd be honored to take care of those things. Later, when Sarah and I got home and started researching costs, we realized we just committed to spending about $25,000. The photographer alone was going to cost $12,000, and that was for his mid-range package. The ceremony venue, flowers, music, and all the associated costs would make up the rest. Ben, Sarah said quietly as we sat at our kitchen table, looking at the numbers, this is more than we spent on our entire wedding. She was right. Our wedding had been beautiful, but simple. We'd gotten married in our church, had the reception in the church fellowship hall, and Sarah's mother and aunts had prepared most of the food themselves. The whole thing cost maybe $3,000, and we'd felt like we were splurging. Times are different now, I said. And this is our only son's wedding. We want it to be special. I'm not saying we shouldn't help, Sarah said carefully. I'm just saying we need to be realistic about what we can afford. But I'd already made up my mind. We'd figure out the money somehow. We always did. As the wedding planning progressed over the next several months, it became clear that Jessica's family's idea of appropriate and our idea of appropriate were very different things. The ceremony venue they'd suggested was a historic mansion with gardens that cost $8,000 just to rent for the day. The flowers for the ceremony, separate from the reception flowers, mind you, were going to cost $4,000. The string quartet for the ceremony was another $2,500. Every time I would gently suggest a less expensive alternative, Michael would get frustrated with me. Dad, this is my wedding day. Can't we splurge a little? I mean, I'm only going to get married once. And Jessica, while never directly asking for anything, would make comments like, "Oh, I saw the most beautiful arch made of white roses at my cousin's wedding. It was absolutely stunning." Then she'd show us pictures, and somehow we'd find ourselves committed to a $1,800 floral arch. The photography situation got completely out of hand. What started as a $12,000 package somehow became an $18,000 package when Michael and Jessica decided they also wanted engagement photos, a bridal portrait session, and extended coverage of the reception. "But Dad," Michael explained when I questioned the additional costs, "Jessica's family is flying people in from all over the country. Her cousins from California, her grandmother from Florida, family friends from New York. This is their one chance to see us get married. Don't we want to capture every moment?" I found myself saying yes to expenses I couldn't really afford because I couldn't bear to be the reason my son's wedding wasn't everything he dreamed it would be. Sarah and I had to take out a loan against our house to cover all the costs. We'd been planning to retire in the next 5 years, but now that timeline was going to have to be extended significantly. "It's an investment in our son's happiness," I told Sarah when she expressed concern about our financial situation. "I just hope he appreciates what we're sacrificing for this," she said. As the wedding approached, the stress began to show on everyone, but particularly on Michael. The closer we got to the date, the more anxious and irritable he became. Part of it was normal pre-wedding jitters, I'm sure. But part of it was also the growing realization that he was about to be married to someone whose lifestyle expectations were significantly higher than his current ability to provide. Jessica had been patient during their engagement, but she'd also made it clear that she expected certain things from their married life. She wanted to live in a nice neighborhood, in a house rather than an apartment. She wanted to be able to travel, to entertain, to maintain the lifestyle she was accustomed to. Michael's job at the marketing firm was decent, but it wasn't going to support the kind of life Jessica envisioned. And while Jessica made good money as a nurse, her salary alone wouldn't bridge that gap either. "I just need a break, you know," Michael said to me one evening when he stopped by the house about a month before the wedding. "Something that will really launch my career to the next level." "What kind of break?" I asked. "Well, Jessica's dad knows a lot of people in the business world. He's got connections at some major companies, and he thinks he might be able to help me get an interview at this consulting firm downtown. The problem is, they're looking for people with MBAs, and I don't have one." I could see where this was heading. "Dad, if I could go back to school and get my MBA, it would change everything. I could get a job making 6 figures right out of school. Jessica and I could buy a house, start our lives together properly." "Michael, MBA programs are expensive, and they typically take 2 years. I know. But there's an accelerated program at the university that I could finish in 18 months if I go full-time. And Dr. Morrison thinks he might be able to help me get into the program even though the application deadline has passed." "Full-time means you'd have to quit your job," I said. "Right. Which means Jessica and I would need some financial support while I'm in school." "But Dad, this is an investment in our future. Once I have my MBA, I'll be able to pay back every penny." There it was again, the promise to pay back money that he'd never actually paid back before, the assumption that future success was guaranteed, the expectation that I would provide whatever was needed to make his dreams possible. "Let me talk to your mother," I said. That night, Sarah and I had one of the most difficult conversations of our marriage. "Ben, we can't afford to support them for 18 months, Sarah said. "We've already stretched ourselves thin with the wedding. If we take on even more debt, we might never be able to retire." "But what if he's right?" I asked. "What if this really is the opportunity that changes everything for him? And what if it's not?" Sarah countered. "What if he gets his MBA and still struggles to find a job that pays what he thinks it will? What if Jessica gets pregnant and decides she wants to stay home with the baby? What if any number of things happen that prevent him from paying us back?" I knew Sarah was right logically. But emotionally, I couldn't bear the thought of being the reason my son didn't pursue his dreams. "How much would it cost?" Sarah asked, resigned. We calculated that supporting Michael and Jessica while he attended school full-time would cost us approximately $3,000 per month for living expenses, plus about $40,000 per year in tuition and fees. All told, we'd be looking at another $130,000 or so. "We could refinance the house," I suggested. "Interest rates are still pretty reasonable." Sarah was quiet for a long time. "Ben," she finally said, "I love Michael. You know I do. But I'm scared we're enabling him rather than helping him." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when has Michael ever had to struggle for anything? When has he ever had to make a hard choice, or sacrifice something he wanted, or figure out how to solve a problem without us? Maybe the best thing we could do for him would be to say no. I understood what Sarah was saying, but I also couldn't shake the image of my 12-year-old self, sitting in that tiny apartment, promising that my children would never have to want for anything. Let's see how the wedding goes, I said. We can make a decision about the MBA program after that. The last few weeks before the wedding were a whirlwind of activity and mounting tension. Sarah and I were running around handling last-minute details for the ceremony, while Jessica's family managed the reception preparations. During this time, I started noticing things about Michael's behavior that concerned me. He seemed increasingly entitled and demanding, not just with Sarah and me, but with vendors, with Jessica's family, and even with Jessica herself. When the florist called to confirm the final arrangements and mentioned that the roses for the arch would be cream-colored rather than pure white due to availability issues, Michael became furious. "This is unacceptable," he told me on the phone. "I'm paying for white roses, I expect white roses. Call them back and tell them to find white roses, no matter what it costs." "Michael, cream roses will look just as beautiful." "Dad, don't you understand? This is my wedding day. Everything has to be perfect." When the photographer wanted to schedule a time to visit the ceremony venue to scout locations, Michael was annoyed at having to take time off work. "Can't you handle that, Dad? I mean, you're paying for it." When Jessica mentioned that she was feeling overwhelmed by all the wedding preparations, Michael's response was, "Well, that's what our parents are for. They're handling all the details so we don't have to stress about it." Each incident individually wasn't that significant, but together they painted a picture of someone who had become accustomed to having other people solve his problems and manage his responsibilities. Sarah began to voice her concerns more directly. "Ben, I'm worried about what kind of husband Michael is going to be if he can't even handle the stress of planning his own wedding," she said one evening as we were addressing invitations to our extended family. "He's just nervous," I said. "Lots of grooms get stressed out before their wedding." "This isn't normal groom stress," Sarah replied. "This is him expecting everyone else to handle everything while he gets to enjoy the benefits." 3 weeks before the wedding, we had what I thought would be a routine meeting with Michael and Jessica to go over final details and payments. Dr. Morrison had suggested that both families get together to make sure we were all coordinated and that nothing fell through the cracks. The meeting was at the Morrisons' house, and they had prepared a detailed spreadsheet of all the wedding expenses, divided into categories showing who was responsible for what. It was impressive, actually, the level of organization they put into planning this event. "So," Dr. Morrison said, "according to our records, Benjamin, you're covering the ceremony venue, flowers, music, and photography. The total comes to $47,000. When he said the number out loud, it sounded even more enormous than it had when I'd calculated it myself. Sarah's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. "That's correct," I said. "Wonderful. Now, we just want to make sure about the timing of payments. The photographer requires full payment 2 weeks before the wedding, and the venue needs their final payment 10 days before." "Not a problem," I said, though internally I was calculating how long it would take for our refinanced mortgage to close so the funds would be available. "Great," Jessica's mother chimed in. "Now, there are just a few small additions that have come up in the last week or two." My stomach dropped. The string quartet mentioned that they have a harpist available who could play during the ceremony processional, Jessica said, her face lighting up. "It would be so elegant and romantic. She's only available for $800, and since it's such short notice, we'd need to decide quickly." And, Dr. Morrison added, the mansion's event coordinator suggested that we might want to upgrade the sound system for the ceremony. The basic package is included in the venue fee, but for an additional $1,200, we could have premium wireless microphones and better speakers. Given that we're expecting about 150 people at the ceremony, it would ensure that everyone can hear the vows clearly. "Oh," Jessica's mother added, "and the flower girl, Jessica's little niece Emma, looks absolutely adorable in her dress, but the flower petals we originally ordered are going to look too sparse when she's walking down that long aisle. The florist suggests doubling the order, which would be another $400. I felt like I was being hit by a wave. These weren't major additions individually, but together they represented another $2,400 on top of the $47,000 I'd already committed to. "Now, I know it seems like a lot," Dr. Morrison said, apparently noticing my expression, "but these are the kinds of details that really make a wedding memorable." I looked at Michael, expecting him to say something, maybe to suggest that some of these additions weren't necessary, or to offer to contribute to the costs himself. Instead, he was nodding enthusiastically. "The harpist would be amazing, Jessica," he said. "And Dad, we definitely want good sound for the ceremony. I want to make sure everyone can hear when I tell Jessica how much I love her." All eyes turned to me. "Of course," I said. "Whatever you think is best." After the meeting, as Sarah and I drove home in silence, I could feel the weight of what I'd just committed to. $49,400, Sarah finally said quietly. "I know. Ben, we can't afford this. I know. But you said yes anyway." I didn't have a good answer for that. The week before the wedding, everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong. The string quartet called to say that their violinist had come down with mono and wouldn't be able to perform. They could provide a replacement, but the substitute would cost an additional $500. Michael called me in a panic. "Dad, what are we going to do? We can't have the ceremony without music." I called around to other musicians, but on such short notice, our options were limited and expensive. We ended up paying the extra $500 for the substitute violinist. The photographer called to say that his assistant had a family emergency and wouldn't be available for the wedding day. He could hire a freelance assistant, but it would add $800 to the total cost to maintain the same level of coverage we'd planned. Again, Michael expected me to solve the problem with my checkbook. The florist called to say that there had been a mix-up with the rose order, and while they could provide the white roses we wanted, they would need to source them from a specialty grower, which would add $600 to the final bill. By Thursday, 3 days before the wedding, our costs had ballooned to over $52,000. I hadn't told Sarah about the additional expenses because I knew how upset she would be, and there didn't seem to be any point in causing her stress when the wedding was so close. But Thursday evening, Sarah found the receipts in my desk drawer where I'd been keeping track of everything. "Ben," she said, walking into the living room where I was watching television, "we need to talk." The conversation that followed was one of the most painful of our marriage. $52,000, Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We're spending $52,000 on one day." "Sarah. No, let me finish. We're spending $52,000 on one day while we put off repairs to our roof. While we drive cars that are 15 years old because we can't afford to replace them. While we postpone our retirement because we don't have enough saved." She was right about all of it. "And for what, Ben? So that Michael can have white roses instead of cream roses? So that he can have a harpist play for 3 minutes while Jessica walks down the aisle? Sarah, it's his wedding day. It's our son's wedding day, yes. But when did that start meaning that we have to bankrupt ourselves to pay for every luxury he decides he wants?" I didn't have an answer. When Emma got married, Sarah continued, she asked us what we could afford to contribute, and she planned her wedding around that number. She was grateful for whatever we could give her, and she and James paid for everything else themselves. Their wedding was beautiful, memorable, and meaningful, and it cost less than half of what we're spending on Michael's ceremony alone. She was right about that too. Emma's wedding had been lovely, held at a local country club, with flowers from Sarah's garden, photography by a talented local photographer who was just starting her business. Emma and James had been so appreciative of our contribution, which had been about $15,000, and they'd made sure we felt honored and included throughout the entire process. "I just want Michael to have the wedding he's dreaming of," I said weakly. "Ben," Sarah said, sitting down next to me and taking my hands, "I don't think this is about the wedding anymore. I think this is about you trying to prove something, to Michael, to Jessica's family, maybe to yourself." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when did our son start treating us like an ATM? When did he stop saying, thank you, and start saying, it's not enough? When did he stop being grateful for our help and start being entitled to it?" I wanted to argue with her, but deep down, I knew she was right. "And what's going to happen after the wedding?" Sarah continued. "What happens when they want to buy a house and expect us to provide the down payment? What happens when they want to have children and expect us to pay for childcare? What happens when Michael decides he wants that MBA we talked about? Maybe. Ben, we're 60 years old. We should be thinking about our own future, our own retirement, our own needs. Instead, we're going deeper into debt to fund our adult son's lifestyle choices." That night, I lay awake until nearly 3 a.m., thinking about everything Sarah had said. I thought about my own father, who had worked himself to death trying to provide for our family. I thought about the promise I'd made to myself as a 12-year-old boy. And I thought about what kind of man I was raising my son to be. Friday morning, The day before the wedding, I woke up with a heavy heart but determined to get through the next 48 hours without any more drama. The rehearsal was scheduled for 5 p.m., followed by the rehearsal dinner at a nice restaurant that Jessica's family had arranged. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was Michael, and he sounded frantic. "Dad, we have a huge problem." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "Jessica's sister tried on her maid of honor dress last night, and it doesn't fit. She's gained weight since the last fitting, and the dress can't be altered in time for tomorrow." I waited for him to tell me what they were going to do to solve this problem. "So we need to buy her a new dress. The bridal shop has one in the right color, but it's $800, and they want payment today if they're going to do the rush alterations to have it ready by tomorrow morning." "Michael," I said carefully, "why are you calling me about this?" There was a pause. "Well, because we need someone to pay for the dress." "What about Jessica's family?" "It's her sister. They've already spent so much on the reception. I can't ask them to pay for more stuff." "What about you and Jessica?" "Dad, we're broke. We've spent everything we had on the honeymoon and the things we needed for the apartment. You know we don't have an extra $800 just lying around." And there it was, the assumption that I would solve this problem, just like I'd solved every other problem. "Michael," I said, "I think you and Jessica need to figure this out yourselves. Maybe her sister can wear a different dress, or maybe you can borrow money from someone else." "Someone else? Dad, you're my father. Who else am I supposed to ask?" "What about Jessica's parents?" "I told you, they've already done so much. And we haven't." There was another pause. "Of course you have, Dad. I'm grateful for everything. But this is an emergency." "No, Michael, this is not an emergency. An emergency is when someone is sick or hurt or in danger. This is an inconvenience." "Dad, what's gotten into you?" "It's just $800. You've already spent so much, what's another $800? And that's when it happened. That's when 29 years of enabling and 60+ years of trying to be everything to everyone and 6 months of escalating wedding expenses all came crashing down on me at once. What's gotten into me? I repeated. What's gotten into me is that I've spent over $52,000 on your wedding, Michael. What's gotten into me is that your mother and I have had to refinance our house to pay for white roses and harpists and premium sound systems. What's gotten into me is that every single time there's a problem, you call me expecting me to write a check. Dad, that's not fair. Isn't it? Michael, when was the last time you said, thank you, instead of, it's not enough? When was the last time you tried to solve a problem yourself before calling me for money? I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to take responsibility for your own life. I want you to figure out how to handle problems without assuming that Dad will always be there with his checkbook. Fine, Michael said, and I could hear the anger building in his voice. If that's how you feel, then Jessica's sister will just have to wear something else. I hope you're happy when the wedding photos look terrible because you couldn't help us with $800. And then he hung up on me. I sat there staring at my phone, my hands shaking. In all the years of disagreements and frustrations, Michael had never hung up on me before. I called Sarah at work and told her about the conversation. Good for you, she said immediately. Sarah, what if I just ruined his wedding day? Ben, you didn't ruin anything. You just refused to enable him anymore. There's a difference. But I didn't feel good about it. I felt terrible. At 3 p.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Jessica. Mr. Walsh, she said, and her voice was very cold, very formal. I think we need to talk. Of course, Jessica. What's on your mind? I think you owe Michael an apology. I was so surprised that I didn't respond immediately. He's been incredibly stressed about tomorrow, and he was just trying to solve a problem. The way you spoke to him was completely inappropriate. Jessica, I understand that you're both under a lot of pressure. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're sabotaging our wedding day because you're having second thoughts about the money you've already committed to spend. That's not what this is about, isn't it? Michael told me what you said about the $52,000. If you didn't want to pay for our wedding, you should have said so 6 months ago, not the day before. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Jessica, your mother and I have been happy to contribute to your wedding. But when Michael called this morning, he didn't ask for help. He didn't say, is there any way you could help us figure this out? He called and told me I needed to pay for his sister-in-law's dress because he'd spent all his money on other things. So, I think it's reasonable to expect a 29-year-old man to try to solve problems himself before calling his parents for money. Mr. Walsh, with all due respect, Michael is your son. Family helps family. That's what you do when people you love are in trouble. Jessica, buying a dress for your sister is not trouble. It's an inconvenience. You know what? Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. But Michael is really hurt by the way you handled this, and I think you should think about whether being right is more important to you than your relationship with your son. And then she hung up too. The rehearsal itself was awkward but manageable. Michael barely spoke to me, and Jessica was politely cold, but we got through the ceremony run-through without any major incidents. The rehearsal dinner, however, was a different story. Dr. Morrison had reserved a private dining room at one of the nicest restaurants in town. The guest list included the wedding party, immediate family members, and a few close friends, about 30 people total. The room was beautiful, the food was excellent, and under normal circumstances, it would have been a lovely celebration. But the tension between Michael and me was palpable, and it was affecting everyone's mood. About halfway through the meal, Dr. Morrison stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow, we're celebrating the marriage of two wonderful young people, and we're joining two families together." He went on to talk about how much he and his wife loved Michael, how happy Jessica was, and how excited they were about the future. "I also want to acknowledge the hard work that Ben and Sarah have put into making tomorrow's ceremony everything that Michael and Jessica dreamed it would be," he said, raising his glass toward us. Everyone applauded politely, and I nodded and smiled, but I could feel Michael's eyes on me. Then Dr. Morrison said something that I think was meant to be kind, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. "Ben, I know how much you've invested in making tomorrow perfect, and I want you to know that both of our families appreciate your generosity." The word, invested, stuck with me. Because that's exactly what I'd done. I'd invested $52,000 in one day, and I wasn't sure what kind of return I was expecting. After Dr. Morrison's toast, a few other people made brief remarks. Jessica's maid of honor talked about their friendship, Michael's best man told a funny story about college, and then Michael stood up. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he began. "And I want to especially thank my parents and Jessica's parents for everything they've done to make tomorrow possible." He paused, and I thought maybe this was going to be his way of extending an olive branch after our phone conversation. "I know planning a wedding is stressful for everyone involved," he continued. "And sometimes that stress can make people say things they don't mean or act in ways that aren't really representative of who they are." I felt my stomach drop. He was talking about me. But at the end of the day, what matters is family. What matters is that we're all here together, celebrating love and commitment and the beginning of a new chapter. He looked directly at me. "So I want to thank my dad, especially, for everything he's done. I know I haven't always been the easiest son to deal with, and I know there have been times when I've asked for help when maybe I should have tried harder to figure things out on my own." I started to feel hopeful. Maybe this was his way of acknowledging what I'd been trying to tell him. But I also know that tomorrow wouldn't be possible without his support, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to have parents who love me enough to make sacrifices for my happiness. And there it was. He wasn't apologizing for being entitled or acknowledging that he needed to take more responsibility for his own life. He was thanking me for making sacrifices for his happiness, which implied that making sacrifices for his happiness was my job. After the dinner, as people were saying their goodbyes, Michael approached me. "Dad, can we talk for a minute?" We stepped outside onto the restaurant's patio. "Look," Michael said, "I'm sorry about this morning. I was stressed, and I probably could have handled it better." "Michael, but I also think you overreacted. I mean, it's not like I ask you for money all the time." I stared at him. "Michael, you've asked me for money at least once a month for the past 3 years. That's different. Those were emergencies, or opportunities, or things that were really important. And your sister-in-law's dress isn't important." "Of course it is, but..." He stopped and ran his hands through his hair. "Dad, I don't understand what's happening here. You've been so supportive throughout this whole process, and now, the night before my wedding, you're picking a fight with me over $800. "I'm not picking a fight, Michael. I'm trying to understand when you're going to start taking responsibility for your own problems." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're 29 years old. You have a college degree. You have a job. You're getting married tomorrow. When are you going to stop calling me every time something goes wrong?" Michael was quiet for a moment. "Is this about the MBA program?" he asked. "Are you worried that Jessica and I are going to ask you to support us while I go back to school?" The fact that he'd brought it up told me that yes, he was still planning to ask for that support. Michael, your mother and I can't afford to pay for you to go back to school. We can't afford to support you and Jessica while you pursue another degree. But it would be an investment. No, it would be a loan that you'd never pay back, just like all the other money we've given you over the years. That's not fair, Dad. I've always intended to pay you back. Intended, yes. But you've never actually done it. Because I haven't been in a financial position to do it yet. And when will you be, Michael? When will you be in a financial position to pay back the money you owe us, and the money you want to borrow for school, and the money you'll want for a house down payment, and all the other money you'll need for the life you want to live? Michael stared at me. I can't believe you're doing this to me the night before my wedding. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just asking you to think about these things. Fine. You want me to think about it? I'll think about it. But right now, I need to get home and get some sleep before the biggest day of my life. A day that's supposed to be about love and family and celebration, not about money and guilt trips. He turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back at me. You know what, Dad? I'm disappointed in you. I thought you were better than this. And then he left. I stood on that patio for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My son was disappointed in me because I'd asked him to take responsibility for his own life. My son thought I was picking a fight because I'd refused to automatically pay for something he wanted. When Sarah and I got home that night, I told her everything. Ben, she said when I'd finished, I'm proud of you. Proud of me? I just had a terrible fight with our son the night before his wedding. You stood up for yourself. You set a boundary. That's not easy, especially with your own child. But what if I've ruined tomorrow? What if he's so angry with me that it affects the wedding? Then that's his choice, Sarah said. You didn't create this situation, Ben. You just finally stopped enabling it. I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about Michael's face when he told me he was disappointed in me. I kept wondering if I should call him and apologize, just to make sure his wedding day wasn't ruined by our argument. At 6 a.m., I was sitting in the kitchen with my coffee when my phone rang. It was Michael. Dad, he said, and his voice sounded terrible. We need to talk. Of course. What's wrong? Jessica and I had a huge fight last night after we got home from the dinner. My heart sank. About what? About you. About money. About everything. I waited for him to continue. She's really upset about the way you handled the situation yesterday. She thinks you're trying to sabotage our wedding, and she's questioning whether you actually support our marriage. Michael, that's not true. I know, Dad. At least, I think I know. But Jessica is really hurt, and her family is asking questions about whether the ceremony costs are actually going to be covered. What do you mean? I mean, Dr. Morrison called me this morning and asked if we need to make other arrangements for paying the vendors, since there seems to be some uncertainty about your financial commitment. I felt sick. Michael, I never said I wasn't going to pay for the ceremony. But you did say you couldn't afford to keep giving us money. That's not the same thing, isn't it? Dad, Jessica's family has spent a fortune on the reception. If you back out now, we'll have to cancel the whole wedding. I'm not backing out, Michael. Then what is this about? What do you want from me? I took a deep breath. This was the moment. This was when I either backed down and returned to the same pattern we've been in for years, or I stood my ground and dealt with the consequences. Michael, I want you to understand that your mother and I love you, and we want to help you, but we can't keep being your financial safety net for everything. So you are backing out. No, I'm not backing out of the wedding. But after today, things need to change. What do you mean? I mean, after today, you and Jessica need to figure out how to solve your own problems without calling us for money. Dad, we're going to be married. We're going to be starting a life together. There are going to be expenses. And you're going to have to figure out how to handle those expenses yourselves. There was a long pause. Fine, Michael said finally. If that's how you want it. Michael, I don't want to fight with you on your wedding day. Then don't fight with me. Just pay for what you said you'd pay for, and let me enjoy my wedding. The conversation ended with both of us frustrated and hurt, but at least he seemed to understand that I wasn't going to cancel the ceremony payments. At 8 a.m., Sarah and I started getting ready for the wedding. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m., and we needed to be at the venue by 2 p.m. to help with final setup. At 10 a.m., Jessica called. Mr. Walsh, she said, I owe you an apology. I was so surprised I almost dropped the phone. Last night, after Michael and I talked, I realized that I may have misunderstood what happened yesterday with the dress situation. Jessica, please let me finish. I was stressed about the wedding, and when Michael told me about your conversation, I assumed you were having second thoughts about supporting our marriage. But Michael explained that you were just frustrated about the way he asked for help. That's right. And I want you to know that I understand. Michael can be, well, he's not always great at asking for things. He tends to just assume that problems will get solved for him. This was the most self-aware thing I'd ever heard Jessica say about Michael. But Mr. Walsh, I also want you to know how much I appreciate everything you and Mrs. Walsh have done for our wedding. I know it's been expensive, and I know you've made sacrifices. We've been happy to help, Jessica. I know. And I promise you that after today, Michael and I are going to work on being more independent. We're going to try to solve our own problems before asking for help. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about Michael and Jessica's future. Thank you for saying that, Jessica. It means a lot. Mr. Walsh. There's something else. What's that? The dress situation got resolved. My sister found a dress at another shop that works perfectly, and my parents paid for it. So you don't need to worry about that anymore. I was relieved, but also a little sad that it had taken a major argument to get to this point. The wedding ceremony was absolutely beautiful. Despite all the stress and conflict of the previous few days, when Michael saw Jessica walking down the aisle, his face lit up with such pure joy that I forgot all about our arguments. The historic mansion looked like something out of a fairy tale. The white roses were perfect, the harpist added an elegant touch, and the sound system worked flawlessly. Every detail that we'd agonized over and paid for came together to create exactly the kind of ceremony Michael and Jessica had dreamed of. During the vows, Michael talked about how Jessica had made him want to be a better man, how she had inspired him to think about the future in ways he never had before. Jessica talked about how Michael's optimism and sense of humor had brought joy into her life, and how excited she was to build a life with him. Looking at them standing there together, so happy and so in love, I felt a mix of emotions. I was incredibly proud of my son, and genuinely happy for both of them. But I was also worried about what would happen when the wedding magic wore off and they had to deal with the practical realities of married life. After the ceremony, we had about an hour of cocktails and photos before moving to the reception venue. During this time, several of Jessica's relatives came up to compliment Sarah and me on how beautiful the ceremony had been. "You must be so proud," Jessica's aunt said to me. "Everything was absolutely perfect." "Thank you," I said. "We're just happy that Michael and Jessica got the wedding they wanted." Dr. Morrison approached me during the photo session. "Ben," he said, "I want to thank you again for everything you've done. The ceremony was flawless. It was our pleasure. I also want to apologize if there was any confusion yesterday about the financial arrangements. Michael mentioned that there had been some miscommunication, and I wanted to make sure everything was squared away." "Everything's fine," I assured him. "Good. And Ben, I want you to know that Martha and I consider ourselves lucky to be joining families with you and Sarah. Michael is a good young man, and it's clear that he comes from a loving home." I appreciated his words, but I couldn't help thinking about the conversations I'd had with Michael over the past few days. Was he really a good young man, or was he someone who had been unable to avoid growing up? The reception was held at the country club where the Morrison family were members. It was elegant and sophisticated, exactly the kind of event I'd expected from Jessica's family. During dinner, I found myself sitting next to Jessica's uncle, who was a financial planner. We started talking about retirement planning, and he mentioned how important it was for people our age to prioritize our own financial security. "Too many people in their 60s sacrifice their retirement to help their adult children," he said. "And while it's natural to want to help, it's not actually helping anyone if you end up becoming financially dependent on your children in your old age." His words hit close to home. "The best thing you can do for your children," he continued, "is to make sure you can take care of yourself. That way, they're free to build their own lives without worrying about supporting you." I thought about the $52,000 we'd spent on the wedding, and the additional debt we'd taken on to pay for it. I thought about our delayed retirement plans and our aging house that needed repairs we couldn't afford. During the dancing portion of the evening, Michael approached me. "Dad, can we talk for a minute?" We stepped outside onto the club's terrace. "I want to thank you," he said, "for everything. The ceremony was perfect, and I know it cost you a lot." "You're welcome, Michael. I'm glad you and Jessica had the wedding you wanted. I also want to apologize for the way I've been acting lately. Jessica and I talked about it last night, and she helped me see that I've been taking advantage of your generosity. This was what I've been hoping to hear for years." "I don't think you were doing it maliciously," I said. But yes, I think you've gotten into the habit of expecting us to solve your problems. You're right, and I want to change that. I'm glad to hear it. But Dad, I also want to ask you about something. My heart sank. Here it comes, I thought. Jessica and I have been talking about our future, and we know we want to buy a house within the next year or two. That's a big step. It is. And we want to do it right. We want to save up for a down payment ourselves, and we want to make sure we can afford the mortgage payments on our own. I was pleasantly surprised. This sounded like responsible planning. But we also know we don't know much about the home buying process, and we were wondering if you might be willing to help us understand how it works. Not financially, he added quickly, but just with advice and guidance. Of course, I said. I'd be happy to help you learn about the process. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. We stood there for a moment, looking out at the golf course. Michael, can I ask you something? Sure. What happened to the MBA program idea? He was quiet for a minute. Jessica and I decided it wasn't the right time, he said finally. We realized that we need to focus on building our life together first, and maybe think about additional education later when we can afford to pay for it ourselves. I was so relieved I almost cried. I think that's a very mature decision, I said. Dad, I know I've made mistakes. I know I've asked for too much, too often. But I want you to know that I do appreciate everything you've done for me, and I'm going to try to do better. I know you will, son. We hugged, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine and uncomplicated. The week after the wedding was strange. After months of intense planning and preparation, everything felt quiet and anticlimactic. Michael and Jessica went on their honeymoon to Italy, a trip they had saved for and paid for themselves, which I took as a good sign. While they were gone, Sarah and I had time to process everything that had happened and think about what we'd learned. Do you regret it? Sarah asked me one evening as we sat on our back porch. Spending so much on the wedding? I thought about her question carefully. I regret that it took so long for me to set boundaries, I said. I regret that Michael had to learn about responsibility and gratitude the hard way, on his wedding weekend. But no, I don't regret the wedding itself. They got the celebration they wanted, and hopefully it's the only wedding we'll ever have to pay for Michael. Sarah laughed. Hopefully. But I do regret the pattern we fell into over the years, I continued. I regret that I enabled him to become someone who expected other people to solve his problems. You were trying to be a good father. I was trying to be a different father than my own father was to me. But I think I went too far in the other direction. Over the following weeks, I started thinking a lot about what it really means to help someone versus what it means to enable them. I realized that in my desire to shield Michael from struggle, I had actually prevented him from developing the skills and confidence that come from overcoming challenges on your own. When Michael and Jessica returned from their honeymoon, they invited us over for dinner at their apartment. It was a simple meal that Jessica had cooked herself, and they seemed relaxed and happy. During dinner, Michael told us about their plans for the future. They'd created a budget, set savings goals, and made decisions about how to manage their finances as a married couple. We want to be debt-free except for a mortgage by the time we're 35, Jessica said. And we want to save up enough for a 20% down payment before we buy a house. Those are great goals, Sarah said. It might take us 3 or 4 years to save that much, Michael added, but we think it's worth it to do it right. I was impressed by their thoughtfulness and planning. We also wanted to talk to you about something else, Jessica said, looking at Michael. Here we go, I thought. We know we've asked for help a lot over the years, Michael said, and we want to change that dynamic. So we've decided that unless there's a real emergency, like a medical crisis or job loss, we're not going to ask you for financial help anymore, Jessica said. And we want to start paying you back, Michael added. We know we owe you money from over the years, and we want to work out a payment plan. I was shocked. Michael, you don't need to. Yes, we do, he said firmly. We calculated that between the car repairs, the rent help, the job search expenses, and all the other things you've paid for over the years, we owe you about $18,000. Not including the wedding costs, which we consider a gift. We can't afford to pay it all back at once, Jessica said, but we can do $200 a month. It'll take us about 8 years, but we want to do it. I looked at Sarah, and I could see that she was as surprised and proud as I was. If that's what you want to do, I said, then we appreciate it. It is what we want to do, Michael said. It's important to us to start our marriage by taking responsibility for our past and our future. 6 months after the wedding, I can honestly say that the decision to set boundaries with Michael was one of the best things I've ever done as a parent, even though it was one of the hardest. Michael and Jessica have been true to their word. They haven't asked us for money once since their wedding day. When Michael's car needed major repairs 2 months ago, they figured out how to handle it themselves, taking out a small personal loan and adjusting their budget to accommodate the payments. When Jessica's hours were cut back at the hospital temporarily, they reduced their expenses and made it work without calling us for help. Most importantly, Michael seems happier and more confident. He's proud of the financial independence he and Jessica have achieved, and he talks about their future plans with a sense of ownership and responsibility that I'd never heard from him before. The monthly $200 payments they're making have become a symbol of something larger. It's not about the money. Sarah and I would happily forgive the debt. But for Michael, making those payments represents his commitment to being financially independent and taking responsibility for his choices. It feels good to pay my own way, he told me recently. I never realized how much I was relying on you until I stopped doing it. Looking back on my own childhood and my relationship with my father, I can see now that my determination to give my children everything I didn't have created its own problems. My father's inability to provide for us taught me the value of hard work, the importance of budgeting and planning, and the satisfaction that comes from earning something yourself. By giving Michael everything he wanted without requiring him to work for it, I deprived him of those same lessons. But here's what I've learned: it's never too late to change a pattern, even with your adult children. It's never too late to set boundaries and expectations. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop making their life easy and start helping them become capable. One of the unexpected consequences of setting boundaries with Michael has been the positive impact on my relationship with Emma, our daughter. A few weeks after the wedding, Emma called me. "Dad," she said, "I heard about what happened with Michael's wedding. I was nervous about this conversation." Emma had always been more responsible than Michael, but they were close siblings, and I wasn't sure whose side she would take. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Thank me for finally standing up to him. I've been watching Michael take advantage of you and Mom for years, and it's been really hard to see." I was surprised by her honesty. "When James and I got married, we worked so hard to keep our costs reasonable because we knew you'd already done so much for us over the years, and we didn't want to be a burden," she continued. "But then Michael comes along and expects you to spend $50,000 on his ceremony alone, and you just do it." I realized that my enabling of Michael hadn't just hurt Michael, it had also been unfair to Emma, who had been responsible and considerate and had received less support as a result. "Emma, I never meant for it to seem like we were playing favorites. I know you didn't, Dad. But the message I got was that being responsible and independent meant getting less help, while being demanding and entitled meant getting more help." She was right, and I felt terrible about it. "But I also know that you were just trying to help Michael learn to stand on his own feet," she continued. "It just took you a while to figure out that helping him too much was actually hurting him. I'm sorry if our decisions about Michael affected how supported you felt. Dad, I don't need an apology. I need you to know that I'm proud of you for finally setting boundaries with him. And I think Michael is going to be a better person because of it." That conversation with Emma helped me understand something important. When you enable one family member, it affects everyone in the family. It sends messages about what behavior gets rewarded, and it can create resentment and confusion among siblings. A year after their wedding, Michael and Jessica's marriage seems to be thriving in ways that I don't think would have been possible if we'd continued our old patterns. Because they've had to figure out their problems together, they've developed strong communication skills and a true partnership. When Jessica was offered a position at a different hospital that would require them to relocate, they spent weeks researching the decision together, looking at cost of living, career opportunities for Michael, housing markets, and all the practical considerations that come with a big move. "We decided to stay here for now," Michael told me when they'd made their decision. "The new job would have been great for Jessica, but when we looked at all the factors, it didn't make sense financially. Jessica's going to apply for a promotion at her current hospital instead, and I'm going to start taking some night classes to improve my skills for a better position." The Michael who got married a year ago would have expected us to help them make the move if they decided they wanted to do it. This Michael was thinking practically about what they could afford and what made sense for their goals. When they celebrated their first wedding anniversary, they threw a small dinner party at their apartment for close friends and family. Jessica cooked, Michael handled the decorations, and they worked together to host a lovely evening. A year ago, I would have suggested we go to that expensive restaurant downtown and figured out how to pay for it later, Michael told me. Now, we'd rather save the money and put it toward our house down payment fund. They've saved almost $15,000 toward their house down payment, and they're on track to reach their goal within another 2 years. More importantly, they're making this progress together, as partners, without relying on anyone else to fund their dreams. Setting boundaries with Michael also forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself and my motivations as a parent. I had to admit that my desire to provide for my children wasn't entirely selfless. Part of it was about proving something, to myself, to my own father's memory, to Jessica's family, maybe even to my children themselves. I wanted to be seen as a generous, successful father who could afford to give his children anything they needed. I wanted to be the opposite of my own father, who had struggled to provide even the basics. But in trying so hard to be different from my father, I missed some of the valuable lessons his struggles had taught me. I missed the opportunity to teach my children that working hard for something makes it more meaningful, that solving your own problems builds confidence and capability, and that facing challenges together as a family can actually strengthen relationships rather than strain them. Sarah and I started seeing a counselor to help us work through some of these issues and to make sure we didn't fall back into old patterns. One of the things our counselor helped us understand is that it's normal for parents to want to provide for their children, but it's important to distinguish between providing support and providing solutions. Supporting someone means being there for them as they work through challenges, she explained. Providing solutions means taking away their opportunity to develop problem-solving skills. She also helped us understand that setting boundaries doesn't mean we love our children less, it means we love them enough to help them become capable, independent adults. Now, at 64, I'm finally starting to think seriously about my own future and retirement in a way I hadn't been able to do when I was constantly worried about Michael's next financial crisis. Sarah and I have started meeting with a financial planner to assess where we stand and what we need to do to retire comfortably. The wedding expenses and the loan we took out to pay for them have set us back somewhat, but we're not in a crisis situation, and we have a clear plan for getting back on track. More importantly, we're confident that we won't be facing a future where our adult children expect us to continue funding their lifestyle choices. Michael and Jessica are building their financial independence, and Emma has always been responsible with money. It's actually kind of liberating, I told our financial planner, to know that we can make decisions based on our own needs and goals, rather than trying to keep resources available in case our kids need help. Michael and Jessica have started talking about having children in the next few years, and I'm excited about the prospect of becoming a grandfather. But I'm also confident that they'll approach parenthood with the same responsibility and planning they've brought to their marriage and finances. We want to make sure we can afford to have kids before we have them, Jessica told us recently. We want to be able to provide for them ourselves, without having to rely on family for help. I'm proud of their thoughtfulness, and I think they'll be great parents. If there's one thing I want other parents to take from my story, it's this: loving your children doesn't mean removing all obstacles from their path. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to let them struggle a little, to let them experience the natural consequences of their choices, and to let them develop the confidence that comes from solving problems on their own. I understand the impulse to shield your children from hardship, especially if you experienced financial struggle in your own childhood. But there's a difference between ensuring your children have opportunities and ensuring they never have to work for anything. Here are some things I wish I'd understood earlier. Set clear expectations from the beginning. If you're going to help your adult children financially, make sure they understand that it's help, not an entitlement. Discuss what you can afford to give freely and what you might consider lending with the expectation of repayment. Don't solve problems that your children can solve themselves. It's one thing to help with a genuine emergency or crisis. It's another thing to step in every time your adult child faces an inconvenience or needs to make a difficult choice. Pay attention to gratitude. If your child has stopped saying, "thank you," and started acting like your financial help is expected or owed, that's a red flag that the dynamic has become unhealthy. Consider the impact on your other children. Enabling one child can create resentment among siblings and send confusing messages about what behavior gets rewarded. Don't sacrifice your own financial security. Your adult children should want you to be financially stable and independent. If they're pressuring you to spend money you can't afford, or if you're putting your retirement at risk to fund their lifestyle, something is wrong. It's never too late to change. Even if you've been enabling your adult children for years, you can start setting boundaries. It might be uncomfortable at first, but it's better for everyone in the long run. About 18 months after the wedding, something happened that I never could have predicted. Michael called me on a Saturday morning, and his voice was excited in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Dad, I have news," he said. "Good news, I hope." "The best news. I got a promotion at work. A big one." Michael had been working at the same marketing firm for several years, but he'd never seemed particularly ambitious or engaged with his career. Lately, though, he'd been taking on additional responsibilities and working on professional development. "That's wonderful, Michael. Tell me about it." "They're making me a senior account manager, and I'm going to be leading a team of 3 other people. It comes with a 40% salary increase." I was thrilled for him. "Michael, that's incredible. You must have really impressed them." "I think I did. But Dad, the thing is, I don't think this would have happened if you hadn't forced me to start taking responsibility for my own life." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when you stopped solving all my problems for me, I had to start figuring things out myself. And when I started doing that at home, I started doing it at work too. I started volunteering for projects that nobody else wanted to do. I started coming up with solutions instead of just pointing out problems. I started acting like someone who wanted to advance in his career instead of someone who was just putting in time. I felt a surge of pride, not just in Michael's success, but in the man he was becoming. I realized that I'd been coasting for years," he continued, "just assuming that things would work out somehow, that someone else would handle the difficult stuff. But when I had to start handling things myself, I discovered that I'm actually pretty good at it." "You always were, Michael. You just needed to believe in yourself." "Well, I believe in myself now. And Dad, Jessica and I want to take you and Mom out to dinner to celebrate our treat." It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. For the first time in years, Michael wanted to treat us to something instead of the other way around. 2 years after Michael's wedding, Sarah and I were invited to the wedding of one of our friend's daughters. As we sat in the church watching the ceremony, I found myself thinking about everything we'd been through with Michael's wedding and how different our perspective was now. The ceremony was lovely but simple. The couple had clearly made thoughtful choices about where to spend their money and where to save. The flowers were beautiful but not extravagant. The music was provided by friends who were talented musicians. The photography was professional but not over the top. After the ceremony, I complimented our friend on how beautiful the wedding had been. "Thank you," he said. Sarah and Tom wanted to keep things simple so they could put more money toward buying their first house. They figured they'd rather have a nice place to live than spend everything on one day. I thought about how different that approach was from Michael and Jessica's wedding planning, where every detail had to be perfect regardless of cost. But here's the thing I realized: Michael and Jessica's wedding was absolutely beautiful too. Every expensive detail we agonized over did contribute to creating a magical day. The white roses were stunning. The harpist was elegant. The premium photography captured memories they'll treasure forever. The problem wasn't the wedding itself, the problem was the dynamic that had developed around it. The problem was that Michael had come to expect that every desire would be fulfilled without him having to make difficult choices or trade-offs. Now, 2 years later, when Michael and Jessica talk about their wedding day, they remember it with joy and gratitude. They appreciate what a special celebration it was, and they understand the sacrifices that both families made to create it. "Sometimes I look at our wedding photos and can't believe how beautiful everything was," Jessica said recently. "We were so lucky to have families who were willing to invest so much in our special day." The key word there is, invest. She didn't say, pay for, or provide. She said, invest. And I think that shift in language reflects a shift in understanding about what that money represented. Last month, Michael and Jessica announced that they're expecting their first child. The baby is due in 6 months, and they're both thrilled and terrified in the way that all new parents are. But what's impressed me most is how thoughtfully they're approaching parenthood. "We've been saving money for baby expenses for the past year," Jessica told us over dinner when they shared the news. "We wanted to make sure we could afford everything we'd need without having to ask for help. We've also been talking about our parenting philosophy," Michael added. "We want to make sure we raise our kids to be independent and responsible, but also to know they're loved and supported." I smiled at that. It sounded like they'd learned the lesson I'd struggled with for so many years: how to love and support your children without enabling them. "We were hoping you might share some advice," Jessica said. "What do you wish you'd done differently as parents?" It was a thoughtful question, and I appreciated that they were asking it before the baby arrived rather than trying to figure things out as they went along. "I think the most important thing," I said, "is to remember that your job as parents isn't to make your child's life easy. Your job is to prepare them for an adult life that will sometimes be difficult." "What does that look like practically?" Michael asked. It means letting them experience age-appropriate consequences for their choices, Sarah said. It means not solving problems that they're capable of solving themselves. It means teaching them that love and support don't mean having everything handed to you. It also means modeling the behavior you want to see, I added. If you want your children to be financially responsible, you need to be financially responsible. If you want them to work hard for what they want, you need to show them what that looks like. Michael nodded thoughtfully. I think I understand now why you finally put your foot down about the money stuff, he said. You were trying to teach me lessons I should have learned years earlier. I was trying to undo some of the damage I'd done by not teaching you those lessons when you were younger, I said. Do you think it's too late for me to be a good role model for my kids? Michael asked. Michael, you've become an excellent role model over the past 2 years. You've learned to work hard, to solve problems, to be responsible with money, and to take ownership of your choices. That's exactly what you want to teach your children. As I think about the legacy I want to leave for my children and grandchildren, I realize that it's not about how much money I can give them or how many problems I can solve for them. The legacy I want to leave is one of love, but also of strength. I want my children and grandchildren to know that they are capable of handling whatever life throws at them. I want them to experience the satisfaction that comes from working hard and achieving goals. I want them to understand that struggle isn't something to be avoided, it's something that builds character and resilience. I want them to know that asking for help when you really need it is a sign of wisdom, but expecting other people to solve all your problems is a recipe for disappointment and dependence. Most importantly, I want them to understand that being financially responsible isn't about being cheap or stingy, it's about making thoughtful choices that align with your values and goals. Michael and Jessica have embraced these lessons in ways that make me incredibly proud. They've built a strong marriage based on partnership and mutual respect. They've achieved financial independence through hard work and careful planning. And they're approaching parenthood with maturity and thoughtfulness. When I think back to that phone call I made 2 years ago, the one where I canceled the venue payment in a moment of frustration and desperation, I realized that it wasn't really about the money. It was about finally saying, I love you enough to let you grow up. Being a father is the most rewarding and most challenging thing I've ever done. For most of Michael's life, I measured my success as a father by how well I could provide for him, how effectively I could remove obstacles from his path, and how much I could give him that I hadn't had myself. But I realize now that those weren't the right measures. The real measure of success as a parent is whether you've raised children who can thrive independently, who have strong relationships, who contribute positively to the world, and who can handle life's challenges with grace and resilience. By that measure, I'm finally starting to feel like I've succeeded with Michael. Not because of what I gave him over the years, but because of what I finally stopped giving him. When I forced Michael to start solving his own problems, I gave him the opportunity to discover his own capabilities. When I stopped rescuing him from every difficulty, I allowed him to develop the confidence that comes from overcoming challenges. When I set boundaries around money, I helped him learn to make thoughtful choices and to appreciate what he had. The irony is that by doing less for Michael, I actually helped him more than I had in years of doing everything for him. I think about my own father sometimes, and I understand now that his inability to provide everything I wanted wasn't a failure, it was actually a gift. It taught me to work hard, to be resourceful, to appreciate what I had, and to understand that good things are worth waiting and working for. I tried to give Michael a different childhood than I'd had, but in doing so, I almost deprived him of some of the most valuable lessons my childhood had taught me. Michael and Jessica's second wedding anniversary was last month, and they celebrated by taking a weekend trip to a bed and breakfast about 2 hours from home. It was a modest celebration, they could have afforded something more elaborate, but they chose to save their money for baby expenses instead. We thought about going somewhere exotic, Jessica told us when they got back, but we decided we'd rather put that money toward the nursery fund. It was exactly the kind of thoughtful decision-making that had been missing from Michael's life for so many years. During their anniversary weekend, they'd apparently spent time talking about their marriage and their goals for the future. We realized that we're both happier now than we were during our first year of marriage, Michael told me. And I think it's because we're facing challenges together instead of expecting other people to solve our problems for us. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, when we had to figure out how to afford new furniture for the apartment, we researched options together, saved up money together, and made decisions together. It brought us closer instead of creating stress. When my car broke down last year, instead of calling you for money, Michael and I sat down and figured out how to handle it, Jessica added. We looked at our budget, considered our options, and made a plan. It felt really good to solve it ourselves. They'd learned that working together as a team to overcome challenges actually strengthened their relationship rather than straining it. I think the first year of our marriage, I was still thinking like a single person who happened to live with someone, Michael said. Now I think like part of a team, and that's made a huge difference. With the baby due in a few months, Sarah and I have started thinking about what kind of grandparents we want to be. We want to be loving, involved grandparents who have a close relationship with our grandchildren. But we also want to be careful not to undermine Michael and Jessica's parenting or to create the same enabling dynamic we'd fallen into with Michael. I think the key, Sarah said recently, is to remember that we're the grandparents, not the parents. Our job is to love and spoil the grandchildren a little, but not to override their parents' decisions or solve their parents' problems. We've decided that we'll offer help with childcare when we can, and we'll certainly buy birthday and Christmas gifts, but we won't automatically step in to pay for big expenses like preschool tuition or clothes or toys. If Michael and Jessica need help with something important, they can ask us, I said. But we're not going to assume that they need help, and we're not going to offer solutions they haven't asked for. We've also decided that we want to model good financial behavior for our grandchildren. We want them to see us making thoughtful spending decisions, saving money for things we want, and talking openly about budgeting and planning. I want our grandchildren to understand that money is a tool, not a solution, Sarah said. I want them to see that happiness comes from relationships and experiences and accomplishments, not from having the most expensive things. Michael and Jessica have asked us to be involved in planning for the baby, but they've also made it clear that they want to handle the major expenses themselves. We've already saved up enough for all the furniture and equipment we'll need, Jessica told us. But we'd love it if you wanted to help us set up the nursery or if you want to pick out some special outfits or books. It's exactly the right balance. They're taking responsibility for the practical necessities, but they're giving us opportunities to show our love and excitement in smaller, more appropriate ways. One of the unexpected benefits of learning to set boundaries with Michael is that it's also improved other areas of my life. At work, I've become better at saying no to unreasonable requests from clients. I've learned to set clear expectations about what services I can provide and what costs are involved. And I've become more confident in standing by my professional decisions. I've noticed a change in you over the past couple of years, my business partner told me recently. You seem more confident, more decisive. I think learning to be firm with Michael taught me that setting boundaries isn't mean or selfish, it's actually necessary for healthy relationships. I've also become better at managing my own finances. Seeing how much money I'd spent over the years on Michael's various needs and wants made me more conscious of my own spending patterns. Sarah and I now have a clear budget, specific savings goals, and a realistic timeline for retirement. We're on track to be financially independent by the time I'm 67, which feels like a reasonable goal. It's funny, I told Sarah recently, learning to say no to Michael taught me to say yes to our own future. Another positive change has been in our relationships with Jessica's family. During the wedding planning process, I'd felt somewhat intimidated by the Morrisons' wealth and their confidence about spending money on the celebration. I'd worried that they would judge us if we couldn't keep up with their level of financial contribution. But over the past 2 years, as they've watched Michael mature and become more responsible, I think they've developed a new respect for how Sarah and I handled the situation. You know, Dr. Morrison said to me at Michael and Jessica's anniversary party, I have to admit that I was concerned when Michael seemed so financially dependent on you during the wedding planning. But watching how he's grown over the past 2 years, I think you did exactly the right thing by pushing him toward independence. It wasn't easy, I said. The best parenting decisions usually aren't. Martha and I have friends whose adult children are still living off them, and it's not healthy for anyone involved. Mrs. Morrison joined our conversation and added, Jessica has told us how proud she is of the financial independence she and Michael have achieved. She says it's made their marriage stronger. I appreciated their support, and it helped me feel more confident about the decisions we'd made. When I think back to that moment 2 years ago when I made the phone call threatening to cancel the venue payment, I remember feeling desperate and angry and scared. I was desperate because I could see that our financial support was making Michael weaker rather than stronger, but I didn't know how to break the cycle. I was angry because I felt taken for granted and unappreciated after years of providing whatever Michael needed or wanted. And I was scared because I worried that setting boundaries would damage my relationship with my son permanently. In the end, it was the best decision I could have made for everyone involved. Michael learned skills and developed confidence he never would have gained if I'd continued to solve all his problems for him. Sarah and I were able to refocus on our own financial goals and future instead of constantly worrying about the next crisis or request for help. And our family relationships became healthier and more balanced, based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. But the decision to change wasn't really about that one phone call or that one wedding expense. The decision to change was about recognizing that love isn't about giving someone everything they want, it's about helping them become the person they're capable of being. 3 weeks ago, Michael and Jessica welcomed their first child, a beautiful baby girl they named Sarah Elizabeth, after both grandmothers. Holding my granddaughter for the first time was one of the most emotional moments of my life. She's perfect, tiny and beautiful and absolutely amazing. But what made the moment even more special was seeing Michael as a father. He was confident, gentle, and completely devoted to his daughter. He'd clearly been preparing for this moment, reading about infant care, talking to other fathers, and thinking seriously about what kind of parent he wanted to be. "Dad," he said as we sat in the hospital room, "I keep thinking about all the things you taught me over the years, and all the things I wish I'd learned sooner." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want Sarah Elizabeth to grow up knowing she's loved unconditionally, but I also want her to learn how to be independent and responsible. I want to find the balance between supporting her and enabling her." It was exactly what I'd hoped to hear. Jessica is doing well too, and she's already back to work part-time. They'd saved up enough money to cover her maternity leave, and they have a good plan for childcare that doesn't require financial help from either set of grandparents. "We want to make sure we can provide for Sarah Elizabeth ourselves," Jessica told me. "But we also want her to have close relationships with both sets of grandparents." Sarah and I are thrilled to be grandparents, and we're looking forward to being involved in little Sarah Elizabeth's life in all the right ways. Watching Michael navigate new parenthood has been a revelation. He's approaching every decision with thoughtfulness and responsibility. When they needed to buy a crib and other baby furniture, Michael researched options, compared prices, and made choices based on safety and value rather than just buying the most expensive items. When Jessica went back to work and they needed childcare, they visited several daycares, asked detailed questions about the programs, and chose based on quality of care rather than convenience or cost. When little Sarah Elizabeth needed some medical tests that weren't fully covered by insurance, Michael and Jessica looked at their budget, adjusted their spending in other areas, and handled the expense without asking either set of parents for help. "It feels really good to be able to provide for our daughter ourselves," Michael told me. "I know that if there was ever a real emergency, you and Mom would be there for us, but for the day-to-day stuff, we want to handle it ourselves." This is exactly the kind of independence and responsibility I'd hoped he would develop. Last week, something happened that brought everything full circle for me. I was at the hardware store picking up supplies for a home repair project when I ran into Tom, a neighbor whose son is about Michael's age. "Ben," Tom said, "I've been meaning to ask you for advice about something." "What's that?" "It's about Danny. He's 26, still living at home, and he seems to expect us to pay for everything, his car insurance, his cell phone, his entertainment, even his clothes. Every time we suggest he might want to get his own place or start paying for some of his own expenses, he gets angry and tells us we're being unreasonable." I recognized the situation immediately. Last week, Tom continued, "Danny's girlfriend suggested they take a vacation together, and Danny asked us to pay for it. When I said no, he accused me of not caring about his happiness." "That sounds familiar," I said. "I know you went through something similar with Michael a few years ago, and I noticed that things seem to be going really well for him now. How did you handle it?" I told Tom about the long process of learning to set boundaries with Michael, about the wedding situation that had finally forced me to take a stand, and about how difficult but ultimately rewarding it had been to stop enabling him. The hardest part, I explained, was accepting that helping him too much was actually hurting him. As long as I was solving all his problems, he never had to develop the skills to solve them himself. But how did you get him to accept it? How did you deal with the anger and guilt trips? I had to remember that I was doing it because I loved him, not because I was trying to punish him. And I had to be willing to let him be angry with me temporarily in order to help him grow into a responsible adult. Tom nodded thoughtfully. "It's so hard to say no when you love someone and you have the ability to help." "It is. But sometimes saying no is the most loving thing you can do." After our conversation, I felt grateful that I'd learned these lessons and that I could share them with other parents who were struggling with similar issues. Today, as I'm recording this story, Michael is 31 years old. He and Jessica have been married for 3 years, they're excellent parents to little Sarah Elizabeth, and they've built a life together based on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and financial independence. Michael was promoted again at work last month. He's now a director-level employee making nearly twice what he was earning when he got married. Jessica has also advanced in her career and is now a charge nurse at the hospital. They bought their first house 6 months ago, a modest but beautiful home in a good neighborhood. They saved up the 20% down payment themselves, and they can comfortably afford the mortgage payments on their combined income. Most importantly, they've maintained their commitment to financial responsibility and independence. When their water heater broke 2 months after they moved in, they handled the replacement cost themselves. When their car needed major repairs, they figured out how to fit the expense into their budget. They still call us for advice sometimes, but they don't call us for money. And when they do ask for advice, they genuinely listen and often implement the suggestions we offer. I feel like an actual adult now, Michael told me recently. For so many years, I was just playing at being grown up, but I always knew that if anything went wrong, you and Mom would fix it. Now I know that I can handle whatever comes up, and that's a really good feeling. As I come to the end of this story, I want to share a few final thoughts about what I've learned from this experience. First, it's never too late to change destructive family patterns. Even if you've been enabling your adult children for years, you can start setting boundaries and expectations. It won't be easy, and there will probably be conflict and pushback, but it's worth it for everyone involved. Second, love and boundaries aren't opposites, they actually work together. Setting limits on what you'll do for someone doesn't mean you love them less. It means you love them enough to help them become capable and independent. Third, the goal of parenting isn't to make your child's life easy, it's to prepare them for a life that will sometimes be difficult. If you solve all their problems for them, you rob them of the opportunity to develop problem-solving skills and confidence. Fourth, financial enabling can damage relationships just as much as any other kind of enabling. When money becomes a substitute for healthy communication and mutual respect, everyone suffers. And finally, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to disappoint them in the short term so that they can succeed in the long term. The phone call I made 2.5 years ago, the one where I threatened to cancel the wedding venue payment, was born out of frustration and desperation. But it led to the most important conversation Michael and I had ever had about responsibility, independence, and what it really means to love and support someone. Today, Michael is the kind of man I always hoped he would become, but I don't think he would have gotten there if I hadn't finally learned when to say no. 6 months have passed since I started telling this story, and I'm happy to report that Michael and Jessica continue to thrive. Little Sarah Elizabeth is now walking and getting into everything, and Michael and Jessica are handling the challenges of parenting a toddler with patience and humor. Some days are harder than others, Jessica told me recently, but we're figuring it out together. They're also talking about having another child in a year or two, and they're approaching that decision with the same thoughtfulness they've brought to everything else in their married life. We want to make sure we can afford another child before we have one, Michael said. We want to be able to provide for our kids without having to ask for help. Sarah and I are enjoying our roles as grandparents immensely. We babysit Sarah Elizabeth once a week, we take her to the park and read her stories, and we love watching her discover the world around her. But we're careful to follow Michael and Jessica's lead when it comes to parenting decisions, and we don't offer advice unless we're asked. We want Sarah Elizabeth to know how much we love her, Sarah said recently, but we also want her to respect her parents' authority. Looking back on everything we've been through as a family, I'm grateful for the struggles as well as the successes. The difficult conversations and the moments of conflict ultimately led to stronger relationships and better outcomes for everyone. If you're a parent who's struggling with similar issues, I want you to know that change is possible. It's never too late to start setting healthy boundaries with your adult children. It won't be easy, and there will probably be resistance, but it's one of the most loving things you can do for them and for yourself. And if you're an adult child who's been depending too heavily on your parents' financial support, I want you to know that becoming independent isn't just good for your parents, it's good for you too. There's a confidence and satisfaction that comes from solving your own problems and achieving your own goals that you can't get any other way. The title of this story is, My Son Said I Ruined His Wedding, So I Canceled the Venue Payment. But the real story isn't about canceled payments or ruined weddings. It's about a father who learned to love his son enough to let him grow up, and a son who learned that being loved doesn't mean being enabled. It's about the difference between giving someone what they want and giving them what they need. And sometimes, what they need most is the opportunity to discover their own strength and capabilities. Before I close, I want to thank everyone who has listened to this story. Sharing these experiences hasn't always been easy, but I hope they've been helpful to some of you who might be facing similar challenges. If this story has resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Your engagement helps me reach more people who might need to hear these messages about family, boundaries, and healthy relationships. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Have you faced similar challenges with adult children or aging parents? How have you navigated the balance between helping and enabling? What lessons have you learned about setting boundaries with family members? And don't forget to tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from all over the world, and I do my best to respond to as many comments as possible. Most importantly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. I share stories like this one regularly, and your subscription helps me continue creating content that hopefully makes a positive difference in people's lives. Thank you for listening, thank you for your support, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to believe in their ability to handle their own challenges. Until next time, this is Benjamin, reminding you that love and boundaries can coexist, that it's never too late to change unhealthy patterns, and that the greatest gift you can give someone is confidence in their own capabilities. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.